everyone. Welcome to another episode of another Dime in the Jukebox. And today, my guest is Chad Lurie, a post production assistant, production manager, and comedian. Yeah. Hi, Chad. How are you?
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being on my show. Yes. So, the first, my first question for you is, what college did you go to, and what was your major?
I went to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and graduated with a degree in communications, speech communications.
Mhm. I see. Okay. So you started your career in the entertainment industry while working in reality shows. What kind of work did you do, and what reality shows did you associate with?
Gotcha. Well, actually, I did start out on like movies of the week and some cartoons many years. I've worked on all sorts of reality shows over the last 20 years or so. But the one that's most famous and the one I'm most proud of is the one I currently work on is The Amazing Race, which is on CBS. And it airs along with Survivor and Big Brother. Those are the big three reality shows of CBS.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, so I also saw that you worked as a production manager on shows like Losing It with Jillian, and that was back in like what, 2010?
Yeah, that's one of the other projects. That was a fun show. I think that was for NBC. And it was a weight loss show, and I forget all the details of how that all was all put together. It's been a little bit, but it was a fun experience. I didn't I don't, because I'm in post production, I don't always get to meet all the stars involved. So on that one, a lot of like interviews and stuff that she did kind of were done on set or somewhere else. So I didn't really get a chance to interact, which is too bad.
I see. Okay. So, well, I guess that's like how it is with the post-production stuff. But I mean, you did get to work with some pretty notable projects that
Yes.
were created by notable people. I see. And you also worked for TV show for movies like the Addams Family Reunion, which was the 1998 CB movie. So I'm not sure that you worked in that. I thought that was pretty cool because I have actually just recently checked out like the whole Addams Family trilogy. I have never seen any of those movies until like maybe a couple of months ago. That's how recently I just like became, familiar with them. But they are pretty funny. So it was really cool that you did work.
That was fun.
Yeah, I bet it was. So like I don't watch reality television very much. So I'm only maybe associated with, well, I do know of The Hills, obviously. I've seen like maybe a couple of seasons of The Hills. When I was in my early 20s, I was pretty fond of this TV show called Preacher's Daughters. And that's pretty much like my only, those experience with reality TV. I don't watch much reality TV at all. I mostly watch sitcoms and stuff, and drama. So, can you tell me a little bit more about like your work with reality television? Have you worked on any other reality shows that I may have heard of, or besides the Olympics?
We're trying to think. Most of the stuff I do in between, like, if we have to work on something in between seasons or stuff like this, I weren't as popular. They were a little bit smaller, maybe on, not as big networks. Sometimes they're in cable networks and things like that. And, and I've done so many over the years. It's hard to keep straight. But I'm trying to think of anything else that was really popular that I was working on. I did a couple shows for Oprah Winfrey Network, and that was very cool. That was a really cool experience. Really enjoyed it there. Let's see, a couple game shows along the way. But they only did one season on those. Just a lot of one seasons and done sort of situations. So really, because of how much programming needs to go on the networks these days with all the cable channels, they'll just take tons and tons of shows, and if they're not popular, they'll find something new. They'll keep on moving it along. But I've been very fortunate that I've been able to stay busy and working this whole time, and it's been a good industry, and I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and it's I always felt it was a lot better than other options that I could have done, when I was a younger man. And I felt I was always meant to be in TV and movies or something. I knew that since I was a little kid. So I made it work.
Nice, nice. Well, The Amazing Race, I've been running since like 2001, which is a long time. And it's definitely really great that you still get to work on that.
Yeah, that's been great. And they won a lot of Emmys, and I didn't get the trophy itself, but it's great to be part of that team. It's been a great time.
I see. I bet. Okay, next question. So you started doing stand-up comedy about 10 years ago. Did you start doing stand-up like when you first moved to LA from Illinois?
Well, I moved to LA a long time ago. It's been about 25 years. And I always wanted to be a stand-up comedian, and I just never really knew how to get into it. And I dabbled in it a little bit when I was younger. And I realized really early on, it's a tough, place to be. And you can focus. Yeah, it just, especially then, it was, hard to find places to perform and people to meet. And I realized I could focus my energy on that, or I could focus my energy on something else and try to make a living. So I chose working in TV. And after many years, I had a little bit more time to be able to devote, and I felt a little more creative passion. And that's when I decided to get into it about 10 years ago. And it was a wild ride. It was so much fun, and all the, just people I met and along the way. And it's still not easy. It's not easy at all, but it was at the right place and time for me. And I really had a great time.
I see. I bet. Yeah, I read a part of Bob Saget's biography, Dirty Daddy. I never actually finished it. But, these things happen. Like, you start reading the book, you don't end up finishing it. But I remember reading that when he first started doing stand-up, he struggled a lot. And like, that's what he said about the industry, is that anyone who wants to like attempt at doing stand-up comedy, that they're gonna like struggle a lot throughout the years. So I guess you would have to be really lucky to really get into that field. And I mean, it kind of makes sense in a way.
It does. There are so many people who are trying to do it, and there's so many funny people out there. I mean, there's so many. So it's very hard to stand out amongst that crowd. And so you really have to work at it, and you really got to be talented to be, to be that famous. My goal was never to be like that. I wish I could have had Bob Saget's career, and I know that he's passed now, but he had a fabulous career. But I knew going into this that was never going to be my thing. My goals were much lower.
I see. Yeah. Well, yeah. It also just depends on the person. Like, if it's really your thing, if that's like your ultimate passion, then of course you're going to go after it. But and it's like you said, you do have to make a living, so that's obviously also really important as well. So, and you were like, when you were doing stand-up comedy, you appeared on the same bill as Bill Burr, Marc Maron, and Sarah Silverman. Sarah Silverman is honestly the only comic that I know on that list. I have seen maybe like a couple movies with her. I do remember her in this like early 2000s comedy Heartbreakers. It's like one of my favorite movies. But have you worked with any other notable comedians that I maybe may have heard of, or like other big names in the industry?
I'm trying to think, as they kind of come and they go, and they're just like, so the shows that I were on were smaller shows with lesser known comics, but when a famous pro came along, showed up that night and wanted to get some stage time, the producer would always get him on, that was the best part. So you never knew who you were going to, be working with that night. And I know you mentioned you didn't really know Bill Burr and Marc Maron. They are two of the biggest names in comedy going. But like, trying to think of other people that I don't know if you know, like Bert Kreischer, Theo Vaughn, and Natasha Leggero, like, were a couple of other ones I was on shows with. And if you Google them, I'm certain you know who they were once you took a look at them. They're pretty famous people, and they are really great comics.
I should Google them. Yeah, I should definitely do that. I have been to the Laugh Factory in West Hollywood a couple of times, but that was years ago. That was like before the pandemic. I do want to go to more stand-up comedy shows. I did enjoy going to the Laugh Factory. It was a pretty good time. And even though I must admit I didn't get, or I think I didn't find a lot of the jokes that the performers did at the shows that I went to, like all that funny. But some of them I did find funny. So, but I would definitely love to go again and just sort of like experience more of that world, because I mostly go to live music shows.
Mhm.
And God knows there are a lot of those happening in Los Angeles, like in Hollywood, even Santa Monica. So yeah, but I'm definitely planning on visiting the Laugh Factory as soon as I
Laugh Factor always has the best. There, that Comedy Store and the Improv. You'll see the best and biggest, funniest people in the industry.
can. Oh yeah, the Comedy Store. I should try that place too. I have never actually been there, and it's right next to the Laugh Factory on Sunset.
They're very close.
Yeah, it is. Okay. And the last question, the reason why I decided to reach out to you in the first place. So our discussion started with you basically bashing one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Almost Famous. I just recently watched it like a couple of months ago. I do not watch that movie a lot because, well, if it's a really good movie, if you watch it one too many times, it kind of starts to lose its charm. And so that's why I only saved for really special occasions. But I have recently seen it again, maybe like a couple of months ago, and I was just like amazed at how much I loved it. I thought it was like really authentic. I'm a John Hughes fan. I um after I just did my research on him, I'm sorry, not John Hughes, Cameron Crowe. Cameron Crowe. I just did research on Cameron Crowe for my blog on Instagram, and I read about many movies that he did. And I have only seen maybe a number of them, but I do love Almost Famous. I love Say Anything. Fast Times at Ridgemont High is like one of my all-time favorites. And so basically, you said that you think that Cameron Crowe writes weak male characters, and that the
Yes.
John Hughes characters are a lot better.
Well, I mean, if you want to look at like a great strong male character in the John Hughes world, there's no one better than Ferris Bueller. Ferris Bueller, he's beyond his years. He knows what he wants. He's not going to pay attention to anyone's rules, and he's going to outsmart the adults. And he's not going to listen to, he's not going to do what he's told to do or anything that he's ever expected to do. And if he gets in trouble, he'll pull it off and he'll find a way. He's not afraid. You compare that to, like someone I was thinking of like the different Cameron Crowe characters, but even and I forget the kid's name in Almost Famous. He's constantly, he's afraid to get involved. He's afraid to say anything. He's afraid to stand up to his own mother. His sister was the strong one. She was the hippie. She's the one who said, Mom, this is the 60s. I'm going to go enjoy this. I know what I want. And she splits. And
He's a great character. Yeah, I mean, I love Zoe Deschanel and Almost Famous.
Yeah, well, she's great. But him, the kid, he's like, and even in the end, he tries to, he stands up to his mom by just leaving, but he doesn't confront her. Even at the end, doesn't confront her when he sort of comes back home and she sort of looks at him like, I see what you did. I see what you did. But he never says, hey, Mom, I'm a man. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go hang out with bands and I love music. He just sort of, hi, Mom, and he's so weak. And you see it in other of his movies. I guess, like in Say Anything, Lloyd Dobler, he kind of does at the end man up a bit, and that's the whole scene holding up the radio. That's the big famous scene.
That scene is considered to be like so romantic in a cheesy way, but I think that like what the critics and the audiences would say about it right now, like if someone did that, then that would be like considered stalking.
It kind of was.
It is. And the thing is, I love Say Anything, but I love like all of the stuff that leads up to it. So I like, again, it's a pretty long movie. I haven't seen it that many times to like completely memorize it. So to be completely honest, I just remembered like why Lloyd Dobler had a fight with Ione Skye's character, because he was trying to yeah, so basically he was saying that for her, like her dreams and her like aspirations are like more important than their relationships. So like kind of broke things off and they had a fight about that. And the whole boombox scene where he was trying to apologize to her, that was like after their fight. That was like how he was trying to make up. I like everything that goes on in the movie before the blue box scene, particularly like when he starts to court her. Because even though, like, well, first of all, it's kind of like a cliche thing how he's a complete slacker, like he's 19, he's still in high school, and she's the valedictorian, and
Yeah.
he's trying to get her, like, mainly, not even like because he has like anything in common with her per se, but because like she's beautiful and she's smart and everything. So but maybe like the way that he was courting her was kind of romantic. Like he was really like really trying to like create a relationship with her. But I guess maybe now I can see how sort of like in hindsight it's pretty cheesy. But I still love the way that the dialogue is written.
And it just, you know, like and it's classic Cameron Crowe stuff, and you could tell that he identifies as Lloyd. He, you know, he is always a character in the movie that's him. You know, he clearly writes himself into every movie, and so I mean, Cameron Crowe himself is a weak male character. His wife is way cooler than he is. You know, which is which is so perfect for him. But even the scene that it was so awkward when he's trying to explain to Ione Skye's dad about what he wants to do with his life.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, you know, I don't want to process anything that's built or, you know, marketed. I don't want to market anything that's processed. Or, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, shut up. Please, you're so awkward.
Yeah, well,
you know?
and he's a complete and total slacker. And the thing is, when he was explaining that to Ione Skye's dad, he was making it sound like he's like cool and rebellious and like, oh, I'm doing my own thing. I don't care what society thinks of me. But even like when I was watching it, I was kind of thinking that, you know what, dude, you're just a slacker. Like,
Exactly. And the dad's sitting there the whole time looking at him like, you're a loser. Get out of my house. You know, and you're just so embarrassed for him. And so it's hard for me to like get on his side. I never want to be on his side. So I want to be like, go away. You're such a weirdo, you know? And I think that's how he sort of writes it as I'm this weirdo and I'm trying to relate. I'm going to get over that hump and I'm going to learn. I'm going to succeed. I promise you, stay with me. I'm going to do it, you know? And it's like every one of his nebbishy characters that he writes, you know, movies, you know, like even in singles, like every strong male character in his movies is either a jerk or is made fun of across the board.
well, I guess it is true. I mean, I also love singles. I also just recently checked this movie out maybe a couple of months ago. And I mean, I absolutely love it. And my favorite character in singles is Matt Dillon's character. I forget
Cliff.
But yeah, Cliff, yeah, first of all, he's a rocker and he's like gorgeous in that movie. I mean, Matt Dillon is gorgeous in any movie, honestly, but I mean, I loved him in singles specifically.
But they make fun of him.
Yeah, no, but the thing that I like about it is that in the end, though, he ends up getting back together with his girlfriend. Like the one that he broke up with her, she broke up with him because she thought that like her boobs basically weren't big enough for him. She thought that like he wouldn't be like as into her.
Right.
And but towards the end, they kind of got past that and they actually realized that no, you know what, we're good together. And I think that that's actually kind of like it's sort of kind of like paints his character in a good light.
Because that's what I'm saying. He's the strong male character. He's the rock star. He knows what he wants, and he's striving for it. And he's not that great. But he's still trying. And so they make fun of him like as sort of like this jerky guy who's a kind of a buffoon. But in the end, at the end of the movie, like early on in the movie, you know, they asked Bridget Fonda, what does she want out of a man? She says, I just want a guy who's going to say Gesundheit when I sneeze.
Yeah.
And the end of the movie, they're sitting next to each other, and she sneezes, and he says Gesundheit. And then you know they're together. You know, she found her guy. You know, he's a good guy. You know, and that's all he had to say. But you look at Campbell Scott. I think his name was Steve in the movie. I might be wrong there, but Campbell Scott was the one who was dating Kira Sedgwick.
Oh yeah, is that the chick that looks like Julia Roberts?
Well, I guess that's who that would be. Kira Sedgwick has been that's actually Kevin Bacon's wife in real life.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and they're together, and then he's all whiny and wimpy, doesn't know what he wants, and they break up, and then she starts dating sensitive ponytail man. and he's like in the club. He's at a rock club. He's at a rock club in Seattle in the late 80s, early 90s, listening to Soundgarden. And he's on the phone going, "Oh, boo-hoo," like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, dude, hang up the phone and turn around. And there's Chris Cornell right there. And he's just he can't even enjoy the place that he's in the moment. And again, so he's such a wimp. So I don't root for him. But I love Cliff, even though again they do make fun of him and a lot.
Yeah, it actually also reminds me when at the end of Almost Famous, so the main character,
I forget the kid's name, the actor's but Patrick Fugit.
Yeah,
I forget his name.
Okay, so I'm looking at the cast right now. Okay, so yeah, William's character is talking to Lester Bangs on the phone at the very end of the movie, and there is a scene where Lester Bangs says, "Well, you know what, dude? That's the thing. Like, guys like you and me will never be cool. Like, that's why I'm sitting at home right now, because I'm not cool." And like those like rock stars that you were just hanging out with, that you just wrote this article about, that's going to be published in Rolling Stone, you're never going to be their friend, because like they just used you. And when I was watching that, I thought, well, dude, Lester Bangs, or his character, I don't know about the actual Lester Bangs that Cameron Crowe worked with, dude,
right,
had some serious insecurity issues, because he's just insecure with himself, and that's why he needs to bag on people like Russell. And Russell was actually like, he was a good solid guy in Almost Famous. Like, basically, like, he really cared about his band. Like, he basically like he's carrying his band on his back, so to speak. And I also really like the scene where towards the end, Russell said to William, "Well, you know what? You're going to write your article. Write what you want." So.
Right. But correct me if I'm wrong, because that was Jared Leto's character, right? Yeah. So he was the band. Like, he was the star of the band, even to the point where they wanted him to break off and go solo.
Yeah.
And so his big sacrifice is that he doesn't. Right. He stays with the band, and then they go nowhere. But it's like, so that they held him back. So yeah, maybe he was loyal, but then loyal to maybe to a fault. I mean, and they also kind of make fun of him along the way, because he's the one on the roof. "I'm a golden god," right? Before he like jumps in the pool. They sort of make fun of him as like he's the jerk, that. But and he does right at the end. But I don't know. I sort of felt like maybe he should have done his own thing.
Probably. Well, he was definitely really loyal, and he really didn't care about his band. But I also didn't particularly think that he was the only guy in that band who had anything to offer. Because I mean, honestly, I love Jason Lee's character, except for the whole part where when he was reading the article that William wrote, and at one point he goes like, "Is it that hard to make us look cool?" And I was like, dude, like, William wrote like basically everything that happened exactly as it did. He wrote the truth, and he painted you in the light in which like you actually are. So like, you want to look cool, cooler than what? You're already cool. His character was kind of a dick. He was actually like he was a dick, but he was just being jealous of Russell. And honestly, that was like his excuse, So, but I love Jason Lee, and I love his character.
Well, as an actor, I love Jason Lee. Just about anything he's in, I'm a big fan. But that was the thing. Like, he's like, I think that was a big statement though, when he says, "Can't they make us look cool?" And that's the whole idea. Is like, no, dude, you're not cool. Just, you're not. And you're trying too hard. You're trying so hard to be cool. And that's why you guys aren't authentic. That's just my take from it. And you guys aren't authentic. And here's the article I'm writing about you. Take this to understand this is why you are the band that almost made it. You know, that almost famous. You didn't quite get there because they weren't authentic enough. Just kind of how I thought about it. I don't know. I could be nuts.
I see. Yeah, well, yeah, maybe we do have also I am a lot younger than you, so maybe my perspective on it is a little bit different. But basically, I kind of love pretty much everything that they're saying in Almost Famous. I guess I love the way that the dialogue is written, and maybe because it's kind of like a little bit cleaner than what rock and roll should have been portrayed like, you know, in the 70s. Maybe that's why I kind of sort of find it relatable. It's like from the suburban point of view, I guess.
I get it. But I also felt a little let down by his story because I think I mentioned to you that, you know, in real life, you know, Crowe hung out with Led Zeppelin and the Allman Brothers and just the nastiest, grittiest, baddest boys ever. And although it's not really a great movie, there's a movie with Mark Wahlberg called Rockstar. Not a great movie, but there's a great scene where they're at the Hyatt on Sunset, which is called the Riot House. And you're sort of in there and you see like what rock and roll was like. And that's the sort of life that Cameron Crowe actually lived. He was there. Yeah.
One movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with Mark Wahlberg. Oh
yeah, it's not a great, I'm not saying it's a great movie, but I'm saying there's a great scene. There's a great scene involved with her, and he's driving his motorcycle through the hallways of the Hyatt, and there's groupies and there's drugs, and that's what Cameron Crowe saw. Like he lived it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to see as a viewer. I wanted to see like this guy had the ultimate backstage pass. He knew these guys. He toured with them. You know, there's a great book long before Cameron Crowe, when he was maybe a little kid, called Hammer of the Gods. I think it's by Davis, John, I forget the name. And he wrote this story of Led Zeppelin. And like, that's what Crowe actually saw. And I was hoping to see that on film. And I think that's kind of a little reason why I was let down. Like, you know, as expecting to see that great rock story.
Well, yeah, it is definitely kind of like a cleaner version. I recently read an article that Pamela DeBarge was interviewed for. And she was like the main groupie that Penny Lane was based on. I mean, Penny Lane was based on a lot of groupie characters, but Pamela DeBarge was kind of like the main, you know, image.
She was well known.
And like in the article that I read, Pamela DeBarge said that like just how inaccurately clean Almost Famous was compared to what was actually going on. And like I'm currently reading Pamela DeBarge's book, and it is just like a long list pretty much of her falling in love with musicians and trying to get into bed with them, performing oral sex on them, and it was a long list of these musician guys. Like, and like honestly, like in her defense, when I was reading the book, like I'm still reading it. I kind of got the impression that she's not exactly as not necessarily sexually uninhibited, because a lot of the rock stars that she, you know, got together with, she did have crushes on a lot of them. She hanged on to her virginity until she was nearly 20, and she barely tried to do any drugs in the 60s, in the era where it was a really common thing.
Right.
And so
I did not know that.
Yeah, like she wasn't exactly like as uninhibited and dirty as they imagined her to be. So I don't know if her opinion on how they portrayed Penny Lane's character in Almost Famous is like particularly accurate. But one thing that you did say in the article that struck me was that this whole scene where Penny Lane goes to New York and she tries to like meet up with Russell, but Russell's wife technically was supposed to meet up with the band in New York. And Penny Lane is like in the same restaurant as they are, and she sees like Russell sitting next to his wife, and like he doesn't like acknowledge her, he doesn't notice her, even though like they're sleeping together. So what does she do? She goes back to her hotel room and she decides to kill herself. Like honestly, I thought that I love the rest of the movie. I thought that that scene was kind of lame because it's, first of all, just because your um lover, the guy that you're having an affair with, doesn't notice you in public in the presence of his wife, that's not a reason to kill yourself. The whole scene where William kind of like runs after him and tries to save her, that was actually pretty sweet, and like I do see like where he's going on that. But that was like pretty lame in my opinion. And Pamela DeBar said the same thing in the article. She said that like back then there were so many bands who were like constantly coming and going from to and from LA. There were always someone else to wait for. None of the groupies that she hung out with would ever kill themselves because the band that they were hanging out with would sell them to another band for $50 and a case of Heineken.
Okay, I did not know the last part. Everything else I knew, I did not know the last part.
It's actually it's an almost famous reference because in the movie there was a scene where Stillwater was playing poker with Humble Pie, another band that they were like traveling with. Mm-hmm. And one of the bets in the game was that if Humble Pie wins, then they would get to take Penny Lane to be like Penny Lane would basically go on to travel with Humble Pie while Stillwater would be going to New York. And because Stillwater would give Penny to Humble Pie, they would get $50 and a case of Heineken out of that.
I forgot about that. It makes sense. And, you know, I get it. And I think that was part of the movie or Crowe was trying to make it super dramatic, but also I think he was also trying to make a point about Penny Lane and who she was and who she thought she was, because they've set it up very much that she does not consider herself a groupie. Mm-hmm. She thinks like she's a special muse for the band. She's a band-aid, right?
Well, yeah, that's what she said.
Right. So I think she kind of forgot who she was. Now, I don't think that it was reason, because I think that most of those girls, my guess is they knew what they were doing. They're like, I'm going to go hang out with bad boy rock stars and do bad boy rock star stuff, you know? So I think that he was trying to like bring a little drama into that. But then also she realized that she was never going to get him, you know, Russell as her own. And that's sort of like when the kid chases after her, he's never going to get her either. And so they're sort of like showing all these people, like how, you know, just trying to sort of the dynamic that while she's all hurt that he won't pay attention to her, not realizing that she's hurting him. Not that she tried, but, you know, that he was in love with her, you know. So it was kind of issue. But yeah, I agree. It was a little, I think it was a little over the top.
Well, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. But in a way, like I can see why Penny would be hurt. I mean, I guess you can't really like sleep with someone without developing like a certain amount of feelings for them. And I truly believe that she did have feelings for Russell, and it makes sense. But like when William said to her, like right before the whole band left for New York, she was like, well, don't go to New York. She should have listened to him. And she definitely shouldn't have tried to like kill herself. Maybe she should have gone back to her hotel room, gotten drunk, gotten into a bathtub, had some ice cream, and just like had a good cry, you know, like not overdose on Quaaludes and champagne. And like with William, I could also like I saw that like obviously he had feelings for Penny, and he was like experiencing jealousy when he was hanging out with the band, and like Russell was like hooking up with Penny like right in the next room and stuff. So, and it was really sweet of him to save her. Like it was like a decency thing to do. And like went on the plane when he defended her, when he was like, don't call her a groupie. She was your biggest fan and you let her to die. My opinion on that, on like the whole you left her to die part, again, just like Penny Lane shouldn't have gone and overdosed on Quaaludes.
Right. And I think he tries to be a man there, but in the end, it's still it's too, you know, he doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any effect. He tries to be this big white knight, but I don't think it comes off. I think it comes off as kind of embarrassing for him. And I think because it's been, doesn't like Russell just he wasn't affected, doesn't he just tell the kid to take off? Or am I wrong? Does he get affected by what he said?
Like
I forgot.
which part do you mean? I also
When he said you shouldn't have let her to die when he tells him off. When the kid tells off Russell, right? You shouldn't have does he make a big deal about it?
he actually kind of does, because as a result of that, I think
Right.
Russell ends up contacting Penny again, and he apologizes to her, and basically he wants to like rekindle or continue their relationship. Basically, it was like when William said like she was your biggest fan and you shouldn't have left her to die. I think it caused Russell to really rethink his whole affair with Penny and realize that she actually meant more to him than just like some fan that he was screwing around with. And like he meant more than that to her. And so it was all Russell contacting Penny. But then when he wrote her a letter, but when Penny answered Russell, she told him, well, this is my address, like come to my address. But she actually gave him William's address so that Russell would actually have the final talk with him and actually answer his interview questions.
Oh, that's right. He never got his interview.
Yeah.
We always, when we get to the next city, we'll get to the next city. That's right. But I mean, okay, the other thing about that, and the big scene, and it just another reason why I hate the main character is deep into the movie, the band everyone hates each other. And they're on the bus, they hate each other. And Elton John comes on, Tiny Dancer, and someone starts to hum, and someone starts to sing it, and they all start singing a little bit. And they all start singing together, and they build into that. They all start singing it, right? It's the great scene of the movie. Yeah, it's a really a feel-good scene. And then comes a kid, and the kid's like, do you think you'll let me get an interview when we get to the city? And you're like, shut up and sing. You even in the moment, you can't even be in the moment. And I wanted to slap him the first watching the movie. I'm like, I'm into it at this point. I'm like, wow, this is an awesome scene. And then he just killed it for me. I'm like, you nerd. So annoyed.
So there's one other scene in the movie, and it's early on when William first starts touring with Stillwater, and it's their very first concert, and they're playing Fever Dog, and he's like standing like backstage with Penny Lane, like just like watching the show like from the wings of the stage or whatever, and he's like standing there with his notebook taking notes. And I love it when Penny takes his notebook and pen away from him, and she's like, no, just like watch the show, look at the stage, like see what's going on, like experience this. You don't need to be taking notes right now. And like I love that.
But that's exactly it.
Yeah.
She's like, be in the moment, live the moment. And this is your problem, kid. You are putting a barrier. You're an observer. You're not a fan. You're not into it. And that's what happens. So later on in the movie, he still never learned that lesson from her, because he turns to Penny and says that he still didn't learn the lesson, even in the coolest moment that he could have been in, and he still didn't learn that you just sometimes put down the paper. Look around, realize your moment you're in. The scenery's on a stage. You're on a stage with a big rock band, and there's fans that are screaming. Like, just take it in. Like, how cool would that be? And not to toot my own horn, but I've actually had an experience like that with Alice Cooper, and it was unbelievable. It was so cool.
Oh my gosh! So when you saw Alice Cooper live, was it when you were like working with them, or you were just like at a
we won a auction to get backstage VIP, and part of it was to. If you want to, this is a rock and roll story. I mean, this was me and my wife a few years ago, and we got really great seats at the show. And then we were told at a certain point, we want you to come to the side door. We're going to let you in. You're going to be on stage with us. So we didn't know what was going on. So go to the side door, and I'm standing there waiting to go. And there's Alice on stage. We're in the wings, and I'm just like, this is unbelievable. This is so cool. And all of a sudden, I feel a pushing on my shoulder, right? So on my right shoulder. And I look down, and there's a fist just pushing against my shoulder. And I look up, and it was Marilyn Manson.
Oh my gosh.
Marilyn Manson standing there like, like this. And I'm like, ordinarily I would be like, get off me. But I'm like, if Marilyn Manson wants to give me his rock power, I'm here to take the Marilyn Manson's rock power. So I'm like, so he's leaning on me. I'm like, good show, man. He opened up, and then he was going to come back on stage with Alice. So he goes out there to sing. I forget which one it was, but it wasn't School's Actually the Weekend. So they're like, okay, now it's your guys' turn. What we're going to bring you on stage, and when we tell you go, we're going to hand you these big giant balloons. We want you to take these balloons, run out to the front of the stage, and throw them into the audience, and then come back. Grab another balloon, and they're like, okay, great. So my wife goes to the stage left, and I go to stage right. We go on the back. We're getting ready to go. The guy grabs me. He goes, all right, we're going to go, but be careful. Like, why? He goes, well, Alice has a sword, and he's swinging it on stage, so don't get hit by the sword. I go, crap, I'm going to die. So he's using the balloon. I go running up on stage, and Alice is probably, 50, 60, 70. He's not close, right? But he's right there, like, oh my God. And I throw the balloon in there, and I look out the crowd, and I'm like, yeah. Run back, grab another balloon, throw it there, and then the show, that school's out, and the end of the show. And then we got escorted back into the back super third level after party, and got to meet him, and he was really cool guy.
Nice. Oh my gosh. Well, that's definitely an awesome story. Wow.
Yeah, we love rock and roll music too. So we're all about it. It's like we're passionate rock fans in our home for sure.
Nice. Yes. What are some of your favorite rock and roll artists?
Well, I personally, I'm a Deadhead. I love the Grateful Dead, and I know I was at Jerry Garcia's last show in Chicago. And I've seen them since as Dead and Company with John Mayer. And actually, I find it really enjoyable. But short of that, my wife is the biggest Guns N' Roses fan in the world. She's a super mega fan. She's a crazy super fan. And so I love the band too. I mean, I'm a big fan, but she's even a bigger fan. And so we've seen them a bunch of times, and all sorts of whatever sort of rock, whether it's Metallica or we just want to see, a couple months ago we went to see Motley Crue and Poison and that show.
I went to their show at the end of August at the SoFi Stadium.
That's where we were at.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. When Tommy Lee pulled out his wiener dog out of his pants.
Yeah, no, I mean that was I was like, well, there you go. I gotta expect that was gonna happen, Yeah, because that's Tommy. Motley Crue was they are grungy rock band. They're great.
They had insane lives too. I mean, yeah. I read Dirt, and I find it, and I've seen the movie obviously, and I find it extremely ironic how I'm such a big fan of the band. I mean, obviously I love their music, but what really fascinates me about them is their biography. And I think that the main reason why I'm so fascinated by it is because I am not that dirty. I'm not that grungy. I am adventurous. I do love rock and roll. I love to have a good time. I enjoy dirty humor, but I would never in a million years drop a piece of furniture onto someone's car.
They did not care. I mean, there's a lot of rock bands that were fake, and you could tell they fake. They pretended that they didn't care, but Motley Crue did not care, and that's why they were so awesome.
That's what their manager's character said in the movie. They said that there are many bands like Poison who try to, put on an act like they're rockers, yeah. But in reality, they aren't actually like that. Motley Crue was crazy because that was how they were.
Yeah. And like Led Zeppelin, The Who, these guys, again, they didn't care. But there's a lot of great rock bands along the way that did, but that's why they didn't have that authenticity, though. That's why they weren't, theirs. But I mean, I know that The Dirt wasn't that great of a movie, but again, another movie that I think that shows really the real wild backstory of what goes on with a rock band, and stories I know from the book that were left out. some really gross stuff, really bad.
I'm definitely checking out Rockstar. So
Yeah, like I said, I'm not saying it's going to be the greatest rock movie of all time, but I think it gives some good insights at sort of that life, and it's also based on some historical actual, although it's just a made up band and a made up world, it's sort of based on a couple of real life rock stars, just loosely some of the things that happened with their life, and it was interesting, but I don't want you to watch and go, okay, he thought that was great. I mean, it's an interesting look.
so basically, there's like a backstory behind it, and like that's what I love to do when I watch movies. First of all, like watching movies is like how I got introduced into like studying rock star biographies in the first place. I think the very first rock and roll biopic that I saw was The Runaways. It came out in 2010. It was with Shuri, Dakota Fanning, and
Yeah.
Michael
Kristen
Shannon.
Stewart.
Kristen Stewart. I thought that, I mean, it's not considered to be like that great of a movie because, well, first of all, it's not exactly historically accurate, but it did grasp that 70s atmosphere pretty well. I mean, the soundtrack is awesome. The music was really great. Yeah. And then I read the book that it's based on, which was Shuri Kerr's biography. And that one, I like the movie. I love the book so much better. It is so much more detailed.
That's how it always goes. The book's always better. And a book, if you really needed to put that in a movie, it's going to be 6-8 hours long, 9 hours long. Got to find a way to cut it down.
Yep.
But have you seen from 1990 Oliver Stone's The Doors?
I have seen that one. I'm a huge fan of The Doors, and I love that
movie. I'm a huge fan of that movie.
I love that movie. I tried to read No One Here Gets Out Alive. It's not exactly like an easy book to get into because it's a little bit, I want to say, basically, I'm kind of having a slow time reading. I'll get there though. Yeah, I've been trying to like finish it, but it's kind of a slow going.
Gotcha. Yeah, that because I know that because I forgot who I know who wrote that, but because the movie The Doors was based on what's his name? The Densmore's Riders on the Storm. John Densmore. It was his book. Mm-hmm. And I know that No One Is Not Alive is another one, and that may have been the other major Jim Morrison biography. That was the big one.
So the Oliver Stone movie is based on John Densmore's biography.
Yeah,
I did not know that. I gotta check this book out.
Yeah, and then obviously because I think that's how they got the rights to do it. So then you could put in other information, but when it comes to that, you need some legal basis of some stuff, and it's how it all works out. So he couldn't get sued, I think, by Wildly Pam's parents. I don't know if they're still alive anymore, because I don't know if you know about that, how that happened. Jim Morrison married Pamela, and then he died. His whole estate went to her, but then she died like a couple years later. So all of Jim's estate went to her parents.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're still alive. I mean, if they're alive, they're very old. I mean, they would be well into their 90s, for sure. So, but it's a pretty wild story. But that's pretty cool. But yeah, so it's Riders on the Storm, which is John Densmore, and it says that in the credits. But who knows? Because he was still around to make sure that it was told the way that he wanted it told.
Yeah, I'll definitely check out the book. Yeah, like I love that.
And again, Led Zeppelin's Hammer of the Gods. Mm-hmm. They've never made that movie, I don't think, but read that book in high school, and that is one hell of a book.
I will check it out.
I think I just heard they're coming out with an Ozzy Osbourne biopic, by the way. I don't know. Maybe I misheard that. Okay. Yeah, so I'll have to check that out. But I love rock and roll music, and I love the movies about them and stuff. They're always so much fun, and I would sell my soul to be a rock star. Absolutely. Just send me back, make me like 23 years old in 1974 and let me go, you know.
I would have loved to be a teenager in the 70s and in the 80s. I mean,
Oh,
honestly,
it would be incredible.
yeah, that's
I was I was said just make me 21 again and give me like $100 in my pocket and drop me off on Sunset Boulevard in 1965. I'll go from there. I'll just go
I
from
would have,
there.
yeah, I would have been 16. I would say like, why wait till you're 21? I would have just been 16. I
Well,
actually,
I was worried about getting into the clubs because I want to get into the whiskey.
I would have gotten back then. I definitely would have had enough inspiration to get myself a fake ID because I waited until I was 21 before I actually started drinking on a regular basis, all because I was too lazy to get a fake ID.
Ah,
One time when I was in college, my girlfriend and I, we kind of were talking like maybe we should get ourselves fake IDs. We were like 18 at the time. But then I think we kind of dropped the whole idea because we were both just too lazy. And quite frankly, I just didn't care. Like until I was 21, I did not understand like why people would drink in general. And until I was old enough to do it, like until I actually started doing it on a regular basis, I just did not, I just couldn't grasp the idea of like why someone would drink. But I'm 30 now and I've been drinking all throughout my 20s. Like I said, I go out to clubs a lot and I always love to have a couple of good cocktails and a beer and a glass of wine throughout the night.
absolutely. Rock and roll's all about that for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but back in the 70s, like with the atmosphere that was going on back then, I definitely would have been like, hell yeah, I'm totally gonna get into clubs because I love doing that even now. I think that if I actually lived in that time when I would have been a teenager, I would have loved it like 100 times more.
Oh yeah, it was way different and way cooler. And I just thinking about all the bands you could have just seen even before they were huge, just on Sunset Boulevard alone, you
Oh
know.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were so many clubs back then, and like I love the fact that the whiskey is still there. Like
Yeah.
honestly, there was a rumor going around that the Viper Room is going to be like demolished. Knock on wood. And I actually just recently had a friend of mine confirm that it's in fact a rumor and it's not true.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know they're gonna knock it all down and make it into like a big shopping
Yeah.
condo thing.
Yeah. Well, they were going to make an apartment building out of it. And then, like, downstairs, they still would have kept the actual Viper Room, only it would have been like upgraded into something kind of like the Hard Rock Cafe, it'd been like that sort of place.
Like a
Uh,
museum.
yeah, like it's or and a restaurant. Like it fucking freaked me out because this year, that's I think when those rumors really started circulating, and I even read an article that said that they are actually going to be taking it down. But like I mentioned that to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Well, that rumor has been going around since like 2013. They still haven't done anything about it yet, and even the Viper Room." In one of their like Instagram posts or something said, you know what, guys, don't worry, we're not going anywhere. So I'm glad that it's just
It's classic. It's a classic rock joint. I hopefully it keeps going. I haven't been there in a while. I've more recently been to the whiskey for fun bands or stuff like that. So both of them, they're just iconic Sunset Strip rock joints.
yeah, that and the Rainbow Bar and Grill. I mean, thank God,
Oh,
I love that place. I fucking love that place so much.
that is so much fun. It's a great place to go. And they actually have pretty good pizza
I love.
and
Uh-huh.
and excellent mozzarella sticks. You wouldn't believe it. They've got excellent mozzarella sticks.
Mozzarella sticks. Every single time I go there, I always end up getting the same thing. I always get their bacon grilled cheese with fries. It's
Okay.
like my favorite there, but I should really try some other stuff as well, like especially the
Yeah.
mozzarella sticks.
Yeah. Good stuff. Always good stuff. And it's wild who you'll see there just randomly. There's people, rock stars just walk by you, and you're like, "This guy's here." Like, what? Holy shit! So cool. It's a fun place to go.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see. It's like it's 3:27 right now.
Go. Time flies. Time to get me talking. I like.
Oh my gosh. Well, this was definitely a great conversation. Like, I know you said you had to pick up your daughter at like what, 4 o'clock?
Well, it's my boy. Yeah, at 4:30.
4:30? I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, we can continue talking for like maybe another half an hour or so.
I got some time.
Yes. Okay, great. Yeah. So another thing that I wanted to discuss was, well, the John Hughes movies. So when you were talking about how like in Cameron Crowe movies, all of the actual strong like male characters, they're all painted as bad guys, and it immediately made me think of John Bender in The Breakfast Club. Like that
Yes.
was, he was definitely made out to be like the major asshole in that whole group, but then in
Yep.
the end he gets together with Molly Ringwald's character.
Yes. And that was an interesting movie because they all had to be set up to play their part. You needed every archetype in there, and in the end, they had to show that John Bender really wasn't a bad guy, but he was sort of made this way by a rough, upbringing where he was beaten and abused, and also that he was expected to be the tough guy. So, like, you want me to be a bad guy, so I'm going to be a bad guy, and that's how. So he lived, he was going to be a rebel, but he's actually a pretty endearing kid, and I don't think that he even deserved. From what we saw, he didn't really deserve the ridicule that I think he got. Because he was just doing his own thing, but definitely was set up as the rough, mean, tough guy, for sure. But then you got Emilio Estevez, is just the typical jock, and all that. It's a good movie. It's again, all shot near all of the Hughes movies are where I grew up, so
Yeah, you told me that.
yeah. So we saw a lot of those movies being made, but and of course Anthony Michael Hall, who's I forget his name in the movie, not Ted, that's the other one. That's but he's the nerdy kid. It's a good movie. Sort of see how everybody, especially in high school, everyone sort of they find their areas, and you can never really cross areas. It's just very cliquey, and how life is.
Well, yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's definitely true. The thing about The Breakfast Club is that I think that that movie kind of like goes deeper than that. So I think that, well, first of all, I did not get into any of the John Hughes movies until I was about 25. So
Ah,
it's like I definitely was like a long way from being a teenager, but kind of still like young enough, I think, to appreciate the humor. And I think that if I would have seen those movies, when I was like 15 or 16, I don't think I would have really gotten into that. When I was growing up, like Hilary Duff was the thing. Every girl my age was into her movies. The Cinderella story had just come out, and that was kind of like what kids my age in the early 2000s were into. And that's why I think that if I would have seen like any of the John Hughes stuff when I was, like 16 or 17, I probably wouldn't have gotten into it so much. When I was 17, I was like super into Gossip Girl, mainly because that was like the new, like the new thing back then. And Twilight. I am embarrassed to say that I was obsessed with Twilight, but only for like a few months when I was a junior. It was back when the book had just come out, and I did get hooked on the bug. But it was because of Twilight actually that I found out about who Shuri Curry is.
oh,
Yeah,
because of Kristen Stewart.
yes, yeah, because Kristen Stewart was in the Runaways, and during my Twilight obsession, it kind of led me to check out more movies with her. And I found out that like she was going to be in this movie called The Runaways. And I think that when I first saw the trailer on YouTube, I was like, okay, what is this? They're yelling cherry bomb the whole time. I was a little bit confused by it, honestly, in the beginning. But then the following year, well, actually, maybe about 2 years later when I was in college, my freshman year of college, I checked out Runaways and I loved it. And then 2 years after that, I read the book.
Ah,
Yeah, so yeah, back to the whole John Hughes thing. Hmm,
well,
uh,
I get what you're saying, and sometimes it's a time and a place, and a mindset, and where society is, and how everyone's feeling, and if you dropped in something from another time, it wouldn't necessarily connect the same way. Everyone's, he tapped into the feelings of a lot of younger people. And so what the one thing I wanted to mention is Cameron Crowe movies are well known for having amazing soundtracks. We all know that. John Hughes movies actually underrated as far as like the artists that were in these, especially like the early 80s, sort of that new wave Euro synth music, and they're all in these movies, and it's pretty cool. So I think it's a really underrated soundtracks that he had in his movies as well.
yeah, I think soundtracks to Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles.
Yeah. I mean, like what OMD, Orchestra Movements in the Dark, they were really popular back then. Who else? He had Oingo Boingo was in, he had Psychedelic Furs, I think Echo of the Bunnyman. There was lots of these. I mean, you didn't even realize that at the time, but I thought they did a really good job with it. And then if you even want to include, Vacation, although he didn't direct Vacation, he wrote Vacation. He wrote it.
I love that trilogy. It's those the Vacation movies. There are some of my favorite movies of all time, and I love all three of them.
Yeah, he did not direct the original. He may have directed Christmas, but the original had like Lindsey Buckingham in it, had the Pointer Sisters, and like had cool music, so his movies weren't just all cheesy and fluff and, Home Alone, which is a great, cute movie, but you're not gonna look at it as like an edgy teen movie with the soundtrack. But yeah, so like I don't think his movies get enough credit for the music they had in them.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, it actually also reminds me of like back to the whole Cameron Crowe thing. I love the soundtrack to Fast Times at Ridgemont.
Oh, the soundtracks to his movies are fantastic, and technically, again, he didn't direct that one. That was Amy Heckerling who directed that one, but he wrote it. It's his story. Yeah, but I mean, he could have directed it. If they didn't make that movie and then he became a director, he could have gone back and directed that movie. And that's, do you know the story that he actually enrolled in high school? He went to like Venice High School in like 1978, and he was 23.
Yeah, but he was in his early 20s. I read about that when I was doing the research on him, and it's pretty cool how he did that and how he wrote a whole book on it. It's like, well, he graduated high school when he was 15, which I think it's amazing. I was, I mean, my grades when I was in school were kind of average because I was never really all that into, like being a total academic. Like my grades were decent, but I was never like an academic overachiever or anything like that. But now I actually kind of really feel jealous of him for that. But like his mom like took care of that from very early on in his life. And it's like really cool how he graduated high school when he was 15. But it's also like back to the whole thing where you said that he toured with Led Zeppelin and he saw all of this like really like grungy like rock and roll stuff that's going on around him. And I think that like part of the reason why he didn't like choose to include that in Almost Famous was because it was supposed to be like shown from his perspective as this 15-year-old kid, and like being a like major nerd, he was like a totally like virginal, innocent character.
So. Yeah, for sure, and I get that, and to me it's a shame. If that's what his takeaway was, whereas like Fast Times, there was sex, there was drugs, there was rock and roll. That's the whole movie.
Yeah.
And he writes all about it very candidly, And again, you talk about weak male characters. If you're familiar with the movie, Rat, who's in love with Stacy, that's clearly him. Again, yes, he's writing about other kids he saw, but he put himself into the moment. Now, in real life, he probably wasn't doing that, but that's how he saw himself. He clearly is Rat.
Well, yeah, like he's considered to be like this good guy who doesn't just want to like nail Stacy, but he actually wants to like take her out on a date. But oh my gosh, I just remember this scene where like they're sitting at a restaurant and he calls his friend to come and get his wallet. It was so hilarious.
You want to go to that restaurant? It's I live in the Valley. It's called Baroni's. It wasn't Baroni's at the time. Barones. It is on Oxnard in Van Nuys. You can go there. It was a German restaurant at the time, and an actual German restaurant. And years ago, that German restaurant went away, and Baroni's moved in, but it still looks the same. And you can go in there, and you can see where Rat called Mike Damone to get his wallet.
Okay, so is it Pirrone?
No, Barrones. Baroni's. He's like, yeah, Rat, Stacy. Come on. Barrones.
I will check it out.
Yeah, and they've got good food there. We get pizza there. They have it's a different type of pizza, but it's really good, really good. So go get a pizza there, and you can go into the walk around the dining rooms, and it's totally it. They didn't really change anything. Like the tables and chairs are the same, you know. It's so funny. And I got to tell you, when I moved to Los Angeles, is before the Sherman Oaks Galleria was changed over. I walked in there before, so it looked exactly like it did in Transformers on High. And I'm looking around, I'm like, this is the movie. I mean, of course, it's torn down, it's completely different now, but it was so exciting to walk in there and to see it finally after all these years. I'm like, I'm here. You know, it was fun.
I will definitely check it out. Yeah, that's awesome. So
it's a fun movie.
It's so funny. Yeah, I love it. Again, checked it out when I was 24. I think that if I would have seen it at 15, 16, I probably would have thought it was like disgusting and unromantic. Again, I was into Twilight when I was 16. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it was a very gritty movie. It was the real talk. It wasn't all smiles and happiness. It was, you know, broken hearts and abortion. Like it was heavy duty. You know, it dealt with like serious issues about these kids and everything. You know, and then also had you know, that had like really funny, lighthearted parts too. But it did both sides. You know, so great movie.
I love it. Yeah. Well, again, Dazed and Confused, another great movie. And Dazed and Confused is the only Richard Linklater movie I've seen so far.
Oh.
Yeah. But I love Dazed and Confused, and the soundtrack to that is just golden. It's like, you want to talk a good movie soundtrack? That soundtrack is awesome.
Hey, Sarah Silverman's in that movie.
Yeah, she is.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good movie. That's a fun one. Yeah, the music in that's really good. The only other Richard, I'm trying to think, I've not seen a lot of his movies because back in the 90s, like he became like the real big indie guy. And I did see Slacker, that was his first movie. So that's right from the mid 90s. So we all saw Days of Confused the day it came out. You know, so it's a fun movie.
It is. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I definitely do. It
was a good time. The 70s were a wild time. I mean, I don't think people really even realized what was going on at the time. And so there was no rules, and kids had no rules, and you know, kids were drinking and smoking and nobody cared. It was a very different time. You know, and because I think coming out of the 60s, everyone was just in a haze of like what's going on, trying to figure it all out. But I would love to be able to go back and just enjoy the 70s, not even from the rock and roll aspect, just from the society aspect and everything that was going on the movies that were happening. It was really wild. It was really a wild time.
Yeah, that's exactly like another reason why I would have loved to have been a teenager in the 70s, because again, it's like you said, no rules. Like, people wouldn't really care if kids are like smoking and drinking. And well, maybe they did care a little bit, because in Dazed and Confused, there is like that whole thing where the football coach hands like Floyd and the other football players like that, document that basically states that you have to abstain from like drinking or doing drugs.
Yeah.
And they were all like saying, well, Floyd was just like, well, dude, I'm not gonna freaking sign it. I'm not gonna stop smoking and drinking just because my football coach tells me to. And then his friend was like, well, you just freaking sign it and then just forget about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I started high school in the late 80s, and even at my high school, kids were allowed to smoke on campus. Like, there was a smoking area for kids. Look back on that now, it's insane. Not only are we trying so hard to have kids not smoke at all, but they were allowed to like go into this courtyard and smoke. The teachers would smoke with them.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what is going on? It was just, and that was just some of the last remnants of that mentality as it disappeared as we went on into the 90s and changed lots of rules about things, and it became way more like it is now. But I looking back, I can't believe, actually, when I was a freshman, you had to have your parents sign a permission slip, but only a couple of years before. This is the mid 80s. You didn't need any permission slip, nothing, and no one cared. And you could just walk in there and light up a cigarette next to your geometry teacher.
Oh my goodness. So when you were a freshman in high school, you actually had your parents sign a permission slip that would allow you to smoke in school.
Well, not me, but kids who wanted to could have their parents sign the permission slip, and if they had a special ID card.
Oh, wow.
And but kids did it. I mean, there was freshmen through seniors all in there. And then like the next year they said, nope, no more smoking on school grounds. But kids would go across the street and smoke and just stand there across the street with the teachers.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, gosh, you're making me jealous. God knows that I already did plenty of smoking in all throughout my 20s. I'm actually trying to do less of it because, health concepts and all of that. Don't want to wake up the next morning, coughing up a lung, smoke coming out of the smoke coming out of my mouth. But I do love to smoke cigarettes. So
it wasn't my thing, but I didn't really have a problem with it. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't understand how it was like because I did grow up in the era of parents, everyone's parents smoked, and it was always like, you're not going to smoke, but you smoke. You're not going to do what I do. Like that whole thing, there's a whole dynamic. And so kids of my generation were brought up like smoking's bad for you. Like the moment we're so I didn't really care. It wasn't my thing.
Okay. Wow. It is 3:45, and I think we had a pretty good solid run, like an hour and 25 minutes.
Awesome.
Chad, it was so much fun to talk to you. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing this. And okay, remind me again, are you still doing stand-up from time to time?
I sort of stopped for now. I think I'm gonna get back into it probably later this year. I stopped because of COVID. It was winding down a little bit, then COVID hit, and then everything stopped. And it takes a little bit to get the energy going again, but I'm sort of feeling it. And hopefully I'll get it going again later this year, and maybe, this summer, late summer.
Okay, great. Well, I will definitely be on the lookout for that. And I mean, we follow each other on Instagram. I mean, I'm following you. I hope you're following me. And we'll stay in touch. And I hope to see you at the Laugh Factory or something sometime.
Hopefully I'd love to get back there. It's a really great place.
Okay, well, Chad, thank you so much. It was
great. Thank you. It's great to meet you.
Nice meeting you too. Bye.
Bye.